So thank you for that introduction, Antonio. I put this up first because it is my hope that you will want these slides I will show you as resources that you could actually act on. So there's a phone number to text me your email address if you want them, or you can also connect to these different social networks. Okay. So Antonio introduced me here, but I want to give you the title of what I'm talking about. The theme of tonight's event is opening the door to opportunity, yes? So I have titled my presentation, Grabbing Opportunity in the Green Economy, because there's a lot of opportunity to grab right now. And I'm going to show you the people who are doing it. From the Latino community, that is. I'm going to invite you to ask 3 or 4 questions during the presentation. I've timed it that way so that this could be a conversation, much more so than a presentation. Okay, so please, we'll take 3 or 4 questions, and that'll fit with the time. I set up a hashtag. How many people are using Twitter? Okay, so the hashtag set up for this event is WOASF 2011. So you can just tweet to that event for the evening, and then we can share it with national or other chapters, whatever friends are not here tonight. Okay, speaking of questions, I'm going to start with 3. How many in the room are currently working in a corporate setting? Show of hands. Vast majority. How many currently are entrepreneurs, running their own organizations? Good. Nonprofit organizations? A few. How many of the people working in corporate or nonprofit are thinking about one day becoming entrepreneurs? Wishing, planning, dreaming? Good, 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 good. I asked those questions because when I was working in a corporate setting, I had this view of opportunity. Okay, here's what it was. Opportunity was something somebody created over there in the organization, and I had to go find it. I was seeking it. I was seeking professional development opportunities. I was seeking additional responsibilities, but somebody else created it, and I was going to find it, or I was going to ask for mentors to help connect me to it. That was my view of opportunity. What I'm going to show you tonight is very different from that. I'm going to show you the people who decided opportunity is something you create yourself. My goals tonight are to do 4 things. I will excite you, I will inform you, I'm going to shock you. I'm going to shock you with some numbers, and then I'm going to motivate you as well. How am I going to do that? I'm going to talk about Latinas and Latinos innovating in the green economy. I'm going to talk about people. Who are these people? What innovations are they bringing forth to America? What opportunities are they creating for you in doing so? And what opportunities can you create for yourself? I'm going to give you those resources and some steps, and then I'm going to end with a challenge. Now, I get asked this all the time. There's focuses on entrepreneurship, but why environmental entrepreneurship, Grace? Why environmental entrepreneurs? You know, why people who are doing this as if the planet matters? Well, this is how I see it. It's really quite simple. We are here, and there is no other. And as a military aviator, I've seen a lot of this globe. Super, super tiny, 16 hours to Saudi Arabia. It's a very small place we share. That's where my environmental thinking comes from. How many have heard the word sustainability used? Okay. Often defined or just used? Mostly used. Well, there's elements here, as you see, of society and environment and economy. But the way I think of sustainability, and pardon the simplicity of this, it's what's the opposite of sustainability? Unsustainable, right? So sustainability is about identifying and looking at processes and products and things that we do as a society that we believe to be unsustainable, and then intentionally inventing processes, products, services to do it better in a more sustainable way. So it's a very simplistic view of that word. Now, I invented this word called Latinnovating, trademarking it. It came to me when I was running one day because I needed a word that represented not si se puede, which is somewhere in the future we can do that, but we're doing it right now. So I needed the ing. I needed the representation of what's happening, innovating. We're innovating. Everybody that I'm talking about is innovating. But we're innovating from a position of culture. from an influence. So this is the definition of my word. It is innovation rooted in and influenced by Latino culture. And it's based on the familial values of reuse, conserve, and preserve. Did anybody grow up being told by your parents or your abuelita, no lo tires, lo podemos usar otra vez? Okay? Okay, don't throw it away, we can use it again. You're welcome. Or how about, no lo tires, se lo podemos regalar a tu primo? Or my favorite one, which is, lo podemos usar para otra cosa. Right? So we can use it for something else. So we grew up hearing that. Now why? Because we were green? No, we didn't call it that. It's just the smart thing to do with your resources, right? So that's the foundation of the innovation happening today that I'm going to share with you. So I needed a word to represent that, and I think I got it. So who are the Latinnovators, as I like to call them? You see 10 here. I've interviewed 17 already. So there's going to be other volumes in this series of this book, but I'm going to talk about 4 of the first 10. And let me see if the little pointer thingy works. Okay, here we have the Salazars, and they're in packaging. I'll talk about them later. So we have packaging, we have fashion design, we have industrial printing, we have social justice and green building techniques, which I'm not going to have time to tell you that story, but it's amazing. And eco-consulting, high-intensity discharge lighting, but you never heard of that one before. Energy storage using ice, very innovative. Renewable energy for schools, the venture capitalists, or Legal Prudencio here in San Francisco that funds these innovations. And then over here we have an engineer creating collaboration software, greening the world through software. 10 very, very different industries, intentionally so, because I want to give you lots of ideas. There's something they all have in common. These 10 people hold a total of 19 college degrees. So these are stories of higher education creating flexibility in career choice and the choice to lead. I have this phrase, es otra cosa con guitarra. Anybody heard this phrase before? Good. So it's a phrase from an author from Argentina, Martín Fierro. And it was shared with me by Rodrigo, the venture capitalist, and he said, I used to talk to my father about how is it fair that my cousins in Bolivia are living in houses with no floors, it's dirt. And here we are living in our penthouse in Chicago because his father was a medical doctor. And they would discuss these injustices in the world and how could that even be? And his father said, you know, you could talk about music or you can pick up a guitar. Es otra cosa con guitarra. And that really stuck with me as I interviewed people because I realized there's a lot of people who say that we should do things better and that we should conserve and that we should not cut down a tree or whatever, but they're talking. And the difference here is the action, the instrument that has allowed these people to actually do something and innovate and lead. That's the guitarra, and I say the guitarra is the education. It's the instrument. This is a collection of leadership stories. These are the titles that are used by the people in the book. President, founder, chief engineer, CEO, executive director, and venture capital partner. Leadership, all the way across. How did they get there? The 10 stories that I've been able to collect for this volume, the people come from these 4 different nations. Mexico, Bolivia, Puerto Rico, and Cuba. And of those 10, 3 had highly educated parents. It was very important to me to represent that a lot of people from Latin America have come here with education, and their kids have grown up with the history of education. That is definitely a part of our demographic. But the vast majority, like me, were the first to go to college. How many in the room were also the first to go to college? About half, it looks like. Good. So the news about that is that it didn't take generations for them to decide to start their own companies. Very first person to go to college decided that they too could run their own organization. Let's meet the first one, shall we? Carmen Rudd. She is in Los Angeles, and she is eliminating the waste in industrial printing. This young lady grew up in Puerto Rico, small island, and she wondered, even as a young little girl, where does all this trash go? Small little island, where does our trash go? She grew up with this consciousness of where does it go? We're in a small, finite little space. Her mother would find all kinds of items and create beautiful Christmas trees. So she has a recollection of being aware to not waste and not throw away and have a consciousness of it, and also creative reuse. She says her mother give away one t-shirt to not throw it away. I can relate to that. Okay? So imagine that after she does her studies in LA in fashion design, creative endeavor, she starts a textile company with her husband. They grow that for a while, and then they see all of their competitors in the industry start outsourcing. So they're like, well, do we really want to join that wave, or do we want to make it a shift? And so what the good entrepreneur does is looks around for new opportunities. So they decided an industry that cannot be affected by China is the large format industrial printing. This is the giant stuff. Your companies probably print these, right? Your banners for trade shows, your wall displays to attract attention from far away. Anybody print those kind of things? Okay, so what she wanted to do is start a business where, relying on human nature to wait till the last minute to order them, you couldn't order them 3 months in ahead from China and wait for them to get shipped over. You need those next week or in 2 weeks. So they have this amazing business, and I've been down there, that they've developed, where they have clients like Nike and Xbox and Disney and all kinds of big clients all around the country that call them and say, I'm sending you a thing and I need a bunch of things by next Tuesday. Okay? So it's really a great niche, but it's all based on not creating waste. Because what she discovered is that industry is very, very wasteful. She decided not to play that game. So she and her husband, who's a textile expert, spent a lot of time figuring out how to make materials that you can print on that truly biodegrade. Like a special tarp-like material. Because a lot of that stuff, it's mixed materials, and you can't recycle it, because you have to pull it apart, and nobody actually recycles it. So they created 2 lines. One that is fully biodegradable, and one that is fully, truly recyclable. And how'd they do that? They called Hewlett-Packard, and they said, we've got these materials, but there's no printers to print on them. Can you help us out? And so then they ended up beta testing printers with Hewlett-Packard so that they could really make this come to life. That's the kind of innovation I'm talking about. And so the company is down in Los Angeles, cracustom.com. Just in case you have a need or a desire to do something a little bit better in your own business and do a little greening there. Rosa Maria Caballero. Now we're going to go to New York. This is the daughter of Cuban refugees who came as attorneys. And she watched them pretty much restart their entire lives. She was born here. By the time she was born, they had started a small little media company. And her father was the first to convince Procter & Gamble, you're going to laugh, to spend money on Spanish-speaking radio stations. Because until her father approached these companies to spend money on the Spanish-speaking communities, it hadn't been done. They hadn't gotten a dime. But he started the trend to have people do ads in Spanish. Isn't that novel? So she saw entrepreneurship her whole life and participated in the family business. And so after she finished her college degree and went on to get her law degree, she went to Wellesley College, which is the school that educated Madeleine Albright and Hillary Clinton. So she went there, and then she married a guy that was going to Harvard, get his Harvard MBA. So then they started the web development country in 1994. Web development, 1994, when everyone's trying to figure out what's a browser. Okay, so these guys are way out in front in terms of vision. So they sold that company and a couple others. Her contribution to the green economy is very brilliant. How many have heard of think globally, act locally? Okay. So she and her husband saw the Al Gore movie, and they said, you know what, that is so overwhelming. You watch that movie and you're like, oh, what can we really do? So she said, what we really need is somebody to think globally, act locally. When she said that, I had a thought. And I want to share this with you because it comes back to a lot of the why. So I remember thinking those words, think globally, when flying as an aircrew member in the cockpit of the military refueling jet. For one deployment, we flew those 16 hours direct from Spokane, Washington to Riyadh. We felt like we were hanging in the sky, watching the blue globe turn below us. We call those missions skyhooking. We'd say we're skyhooking it to the desert tomorrow. Because our perception is we're flying up there, we're clipping ourselves to the sky, the globe spins, and then we land. That's kind of what it feels like, because it's very small. We'd watch the cities, the states, the oceans, ice packs, continents pass by, 7 miles outside the window. Our family members, and my husband here can attest to this, perceive that we are going very far away. But from the aviator's perspective, we had a deepening sense the Earth is very, very small. Think globally. So on that foundation, Rosa Maria decided to start a company. What she did is she took the Tupperware model. Are we familiar with the Tupperware model? Direct sales, women get together, men get together, sell stuff out of the house. Brilliant model, perpetual growth. And she started Green Irene. So Green Irene is her national brand. She's trained 700 eco-consultants. And now you can have your Avon lady, your Tupperware lady, and your Green Irene. And your Green Irene, if you choose to become one, gets trained on becoming the local green expert, your local green friend. There's a student program. This could be a part-time thing where you become the local green expert in your neighborhood. And if you're already doing real estate or all kinds of other professions where you're already selling into homes, it's a really great fit. But what's brilliant about it is that model, the direct sales model, where you get paid, the consultants get paid for going in to provide a service. So the family or the small business that they're helping gets knowledge. And if you choose to buy some products, even better. It's all based on commission. And they don't do, try to recruit 20 friends to become a Green Irene. That's not their model. This is really about the commission model to do the service and sell the products. But it's a brilliant contribution. And she has definitely identified a first mover advantage here. She talks about learning what people will actually pay for when they want to do something good for the environment. Not what you think they're going to pay for, but what they actually do pay for. And that, of course, leads to more innovation. That's another cool idea. Luis Rojas. So notice the first two are women. I'm intentionally switching gears, including this man because he's an accountant. Anybody an accountant in the room? A few people study accounting? Good. You're going to love this because he took the initial accounting degree and did some really amazing things. So he is harnessing the sun to benefit schools. He went to college. He grew up, first of all, in East LA. And he lived in a house, in the garage of a house with his mother and two sisters. The house was owned by his tío, who was also his nino, so his uncle and godfather. And they were very frugal by necessity. And so he has this heritage of, again, thinking about saving. Okay, that really has driven everything he's done professionally. So right out of school, his tío, the one adult role model that he had that was positive in East LA, had almost died in a car accident, but instead only lost his arm and ended up going to college and becoming an accountant. So Luis grew up hearing, go be like your Nino. And when no one else in your family is educated, well, you go study accounting, because it worked out pretty good for Nino, right? Okay, so he went to CSU LA and he got his accounting degree, and he went to work for a bank, so that sounds normal. But then he started thinking entrepreneurially and started an asset management company, sold that, started a construction management company, started getting some county gigs and city gigs, it's minority business. And then one day he saw a story about a program in Northern California that was making it easy for homeowners to install solar. And he thought, what? Do you know how small a house is? Like, think about the roof of a house on a big map, like a satellite map. It's like this big. Why would you start there? If you really want to do this, why wouldn't you go with the largest landowner in the city? The schools, school districts. So he thought, I wonder how I could do that. So he started looking into that and finding that nobody was doing that. Nobody was going after the schools and trying to get the schools off the grid. So he created Evergreen Solar Solutions. And today he's a solar developer. They design, install, operate, and maintain systems for schools. That's his niche. Municipalities and schools. And who but an accountant could understand the complexity of municipal bonds and federal grants and mix it up with some power purchase agreements with the utilities and mix it all up and make it free for the school district so they'll say yes. That's what he does. And what that means is the school board, it's a very easy pitch. How much money are you paying your local utility? Okay. Would you like to keep that instead? It's like a big raise in your operating budget. Which school is going to say no to that? Okay, and again, he structures it so it works out. And guess what? He's been able to build this business because he was looking where nobody else was looking. Very, very courageous and just intentionally looking for that, creating a whole new market. Here's your opportunity. If you have an accounting degree, or if you're thinking of construction management, or maybe you know somebody who's doing that, his business is thriving, and he's got 5 client school districts in Southern California. There are 963 school districts in California, and there's 15,500 in the US. I call that opportunity. How about you? Mm-hmm. Switching gears, packaging. Not the sexiest industry in the world, but certainly one of the most wasteful. And Dennis and Lenora spent a lot of years working in that wasteful industry. And they would hear silly things like, oh, you don't need to put more than 10% post-consumer waste in that box. Put 10%, call it green. You don't really need more than that. Because the industry really believed that. And so for years, Dennis thought, really? We don't need to really use all the stuff we're recycling to make more stuff? So after about 18 years, he and Lenora walked from their 6-figure income, courage, to start their own company and to change the industry. And they're doing it. One of the very first things that he did, if you look right here, all the resources and energy that goes into building a box are used, and then they're effectively thrown away if you use the box one time. Okay, even if you recycle it, is it going to get used again? We don't know. So he said, why don't we create a reversible box? Is that like a duh moment? But he did it. He patented it, and it's this huge innovation because now your resource requirements for all these shipping containers is split in half. Okay, and so that's the beginning of what they did. And then what he did is he went, so it's Salazar Packaging. Then he went back to all those people that he met all those years in the industry, and he said, join us. I've created a brand called GlobeGuard. And this brand is going to transcend manufacturers. Anybody whose products are truly green, authentically green is the phrase he uses, can wear this brand. And so suddenly a lot of his competitors are manufacturing truly green products, and they wear that brand. And he's brought the industry together, called the Green Packaging Group. They blog about it. So really he's exuding leadership, thought leadership, and changing one of the most wasteful industries that we've had. And the opportunities are huge. The numbers are huge in terms of how fast the sustainable packaging industry is growing globally. Okay? So I give you 3 starting points if you're curious. The Sustainable Packaging Coalition, Packaging Digest magazine, and Environmental Leader, which really brings a lot of this news together in one place. And lastly, I'm going to share briefly the story of Sandra Artalejo. Sandra grew up visiting her grandparents in El Paso on weekends. And she remembers watching her grandmother make clothes, and she remembers watching her grandfather take cans, the aluminum cans, and cut them and twist them into pretty flowers for the garden and all this creative reuse stuff. But she remembers really, really well watching her grandmother fill coffee cans with sand. Tell me if I'm reminding anybody of your childhood here. Filling coffee cans with sand, putting string around it, putting some extra cloth on it, and turning it into a footstool for abuelito. So that kind of creative reuse was ingrained in her mind. So she became a fashion designer and was working in New York for a while. And she couldn't stand walking out of the studio and seeing all these rolls of fabric in the dumpster. Because see, the way the fashion industry does it is they create a design, get some material, cut out one model, try it out. They don't need the rest. Okay, they just get rid of it. So now with that kind of childhood experience and then this kind of industry experience, it wasn't long before she said, I don't think so. And she created Sola Studios in Dallas. And so now her entire niche and her contribution is permanence from a disposable. So this means branded banners get turned into tote bags. So corporations that have banners that they no longer need, they send in Miss Sanders, she designs some tote bags or some stuff you can give away at the next trade show. Okay, creatively reusing the stuff. Any throwaways. She'll go to the hardware store and she'll say, do you have any bad cuts on the keys? They'll say, yeah, we've got some bad cuts. And she'll sew hundreds of them on a jacket and sell the jacket for $300. Okay, there's a lot you can do with stuff that other people think is throwaway. Okay, that pink bag up there, that is a dog food bag that she turned into a beautiful tote. Okay, in the mind of a creative, all this stuff is possible. Dallas, Texas. So hopefully you've gotten some ideas of how you could green a supply chain. You know, if you're somewhere, some ideas of things that can be improved. I didn't even talk about the energy storage, but you know, I can't talk about everything here. Some resources for you. Anybody interested in kind of knowing, got me curious. What else is going on in the green economy? Here is a resource for you. The National Venture Capital Association is a trade group that represents the venture capital firms that that fund innovation. And when they fund a company, there's a portal where they advertise these jobs. So when people are saying, where are the jobs, where are the jobs? There's thousands of open jobs here. NVCA.org. These are companies that have received, first, second, third round financing. It's a great place to start if you're looking for a career change. Another great resource, headquartered here in San Francisco, e2.org. This is environmentalentrepreneurs.org, and they're partnered with the most influential environmental group here in the country, NRDC, also headquartered here, and they're the independent business voice for the environment. These are business leaders and entrepreneurs advocating for smart energy, environmental policy. They believe that these two things go together. Very important new group, follow those. Cleantech.com, if you want to follow the money, what are the VCs funding? Biofuel, energy efficiency, solar, other renewable forms. Every quarter they put out a press release so you can know globally and regionally what's being funded. So if you're curious about those developments, this is a great place to follow the money. And of course, follow the science and follow the news, because the story I didn't tell you, one of the guys, Frank Ramirez, he studied economics, he got a law degree and an MBA, but ultimately he's innovating in a clean energy storage space because he was curious about the science and kept up with the science. I encourage you to do the same, might spark some ideas. Scientific American is a very good resource, as is the National Renewable Energy Lab. And if you prefer to read in Spanish or know people who do, there's a great blog at the NRDC called Pulso Verde that keeps you up to date on environmental and business news in Spanish. And for everybody in a corporate role who may or may not already have a sustainability officer in place, here's a really good idea. This report was just produced by the environmental leader and then the Pew Center for Climate Change Research. 150 people in corporate sustainability roles put their heads together and said, this is what's working in corporate America to make our companies more sustainable, and this is what's not working. So it's a free report, but it's very good to keep up on trends there. Now, how many of you have parents that own businesses? A few, okay. Did you know that the Census Bureau surveys businesses in years that end with 2 and 7? Some of you might know that. They survey people in years that end with 0. They survey businesses in years that end with 2 and 7. So in the last 2 reporting periods, here's what they found. These are the headlines of the releases. Growth of Hispanic-owned businesses triples the national average. In the last period, it was growth of Hispanic-owned businesses doubles the national average. So I show you this because entrepreneurship and business ownership is nothing new to our community. It's just not known. It's like we're not taught this. So I want you to know, and I want your kids to know, and I want your cousins to know, because this is what we do. We believe that we're going to create our own, and we do. Here's some numbers for you. These are the growth rates of Hispanic-owned businesses. We're coming up on 3 million Hispanic-owned businesses next year. And then that's going to go from 3 million to 4.3 million in 4 years. Wow. Revenue trends, okay, equally impressive. We're approaching 540 billion. But this is the one that I like. How many of these businesses are making $1 million or more in annual sales? Over 44,000. Okay? So these are some interesting numbers to know about, because it might motivate you to decide to take that step at some point. It's what we do. But only if you have courage. Remember Carmen earlier with the printing that I showed you? She started her business one day when there was a little ethics problem where she was working. She was working for a guy who didn't want to pay her commission. And there was an opportunity to solve a client problem. So she had the audacity to say to this client, I can solve that problem for you if you give me a cashier's check for $285,000. And the problem was that the guy she was working for that didn't want to pay the commission had a shipment stuck on a boat in the middle of the ocean, Pacific Ocean. And the client needed the shirts here now. 11,000 shirts, got to get them embroidered for this event. And so when she found out this guy was trying to not pay her commission, she's like, ah. And she was talking to the client, she had a friend there, and when she found out about this problem, she went back over and said, give me a cashier's check, I can get you those shirts, I can solve your problem. He handed her the check, and then she says, the next day I started my business. Okay? So there's an opportunity, you see it, jump on it, start a business. Kind of wacky, but you know, it beats analysis paralysis, right? 18 years later, that business is going strong. And she also says this, I purchased $1 million machine. Took a big risk to set an example in my industry, hoping others follow. This is not somebody saying, I hope I'm the only one doing it. She's saying, I want my industry to follow. Why? Because it's the right thing for the planet, it's the right thing for the environment and the community. She's in Los Angeles, we don't need more toxicity down there. And there's one more thing I want you to know, and that is about wealth. I mentioned Frank Ramirez. I didn't have a chance to tell you his story because I wanted to focus on the Latinas. But I'm just going to read you one sentence. Here's what Frank Ramirez says. He's the CEO of ICE Energy in Colorado. He says, this green movement has the potential to create wealth in ways I believe will be bigger than the internet. The potential is so huge that most people cannot see it yet. Now, when a man this visionary says something like that, I think we pay attention. And I think we find out what that means, because this man's been right many times over. So I want to wrap up and tell you, why did I write this book? It's such a niche book. Why? Why did I do this? A couple of reasons. I'm out to change deportation stories to innovation stories. I feel very, very strongly about this. Anybody else feel mainstream media is continuing to perpetuate stereotypes of Latinos? Anybody else feel that? Anybody else want to see positive media imagery of Latinos? Okay. Well, how does that happen? Do they just come find us? So I want to put you on TV and tell your story. Want to talk about Carmen? Want to talk about Rosa Maria? No. And that's why my background as a marketing communications person and doing PR, I get that. I get that we have to create the stories. We have to step out into the light and say, I want my story told. Tell my story. I have a story. And then you need somebody to take it forward and put it in the face of the media, which is why Lynette's here. She's my publicist. She's helping me. CNN called a couple of days ago. Okay? But somebody has to intentionally go out there and say, no more deportation stories. Can you please talk about something else? Here's some people for you to talk about. So that's what I'm doing. It's very, very important. And I'm making these Latinos that I've talked about relevant to all of America. How? Well, by making them key players and tying them to the hot topics of jobs. Jobs, jobs, jobs. Green economy, environment. Suddenly, we're even more relevant, and that's the way I'm going about it. But why me? Why should I write this book? Well, this is my little family picture, oldest of 5 kids. I don't know if your family looks like this at all, but this is my mommy and papi from Mexico, and then the 5 kids. But, you know, I had to go through all the cultural battles to be allowed to leave the house. Young ladies, did any of you get told that you were staying in the house until you got married? Okay? So those of us rebeldes who got away from that, okay, well, I'm in that group. And so I left. I went really far away. I went from Colorado to UC Berkeley. Any bears out there? Go Bears? All right. Big journey. How the heck did I do that? Well, I had a mentor. Had a mentor who was my high school counselor, and she said, I have a husband who went to college on an Air Force ROTC scholarship. And you should come over for dinner and he'll tell you all about that, because I don't know the details, but he does. So that is how I became second lieutenant atop the Campanile right there. Got my little bars. And that's me in the cockpit where I spent 9 years flying for the U.S. Air Force, and I got out as a captain. Okay, I mentioned that's how I saw the world. Okay? You can clap, go ahead. Thank you. Thank you. I'm very, very proud of that service and very proud of that time. But that's really where I understood how small the world is. And so that really it connects the dots. While in active duty, I went to Whitworth University in Spokane, got my international management degree, and then I made a really wacky career change. Military aviator to global marketing manager for a software company. Okay? Said it could be done, it was done. I got the pleasure of working for this German-based company where I was in a technology marketing role. Loved that job, still wasn't my passion. Okay, but it was providing some really great skills. The last 2 years, I got to run the Green IT Initiative, which is the global enterprise initiative you heard in the bio. So see how these pieces come together? Okay, you have the cultural breakaway for education, see the world, get some more education, work globally, and then really get exposed to this green stuff. So then the question was, well, what is the Latino business community doing now? And by then I become a mom. We have 3 little kids. We teach them organic gardening. I already had set up my company. I'm a member of the Fearless Entrepreneur Network. Fearless Entrepreneur, I can never say this, Fearless Women Entrepreneur Network. It's a great name. I speak at universities. I go to business schools and I encourage students to think about starting their careers as if the planet matters by providing stories and case studies. Again, if you want something to change, you got to show the success of what change looks like. So I do that. And then, of course, I'm running my company, Gracefully Global Group. It's the umbrella for all these activities. But very, very importantly, these 10 people that I've written about, I've shared 4 today, they have chosen me to tell their stories. They're not writing their own memoirs. They're writing their, they're running their own businesses. But when I found them, they wanted their stories to be told. And I feel very privileged to be able to stand here tonight and share their stories with you. Because they can't all travel. We don't all travel in a pack of 11 and tell stories, I get to tell their stories. That's a privilege for me. I feel very seriously about representing their success. And again, the goal is also to the mainstream. Okay, well, I'm going to shock you now. You know and I know there's a little educational underattainment going on, right? In the Latino community? I'm going to show you numbers that I guarantee you haven't seen. You usually see percentages, right? Well, I need to shock you with the reality of the real numbers. Here we go. This is something, by the way, that I learned as a direct result of this project. Have you heard President Obama talk about winning the future and 2020 and the goals of 2020 to get back on top as a competitive nation? Okay, this is what the numbers look like. We need 36 million Americans to get their college degrees in the next 9 years. As a nation, that's what we need. When you look at the growth rates, that totals up to 5.5 million Latino college graduates in 9 years. Quick math, that's 611,000 Latino college graduates every year. Anybody want to guess how many Latino college graduates we have right now? We need 611,000 as a nation because, see, all the other ethnic groups, they're doing pretty good, right? They're really close to these target numbers. We need 611,000 Latinos to graduate from college. Okay. Our shocking reality is that we graduate 130,000 college graduates. But wait, it gets worse. We only graduate 300,000 high school students. You know the dropout rates? Right, you hear 20% here, you hear 60% there. It averages out to, 48%, depending on which number you look at. It's a lot. Okay? But what's going on is we lose a lot of them back in elementary school and middle school for a variety of reasons. But look at these numbers. Our nation needs us to graduate at the rate of 611,000, and we're way down here. So how do we fix that? What I handed out on the table is the mentoring challenge that I issued. It's called the 2x2020 Mentoring Challenge. Because what I learned from interviewing all these people is if they were the first to go to college, it was not a Latino mentor pushing them. Okay? It was somebody from the outside stepping in saying, no, you will go to college. Here's how. Here's how you apply. Here's how you get the money. And in my case, come over for dinner and I'll show you how to get the money. So thank you, Lynette. It's front page. It's a blog post that I put up, and I did this call to action at Stanford when I launched the book. This really is the shocking numbers I shared, and on the back side, what does it mean to mentor specifically? What do our Latino kids need? Because maybe we're mentoring, but there's not enough of us. 12% of us have college degrees? 12%? Can we all mentor all the time? So this is a call to action for all of America to understand these shocking numbers and to do what's always been done, which is to intervene and change that culture of low expectation so that more kids get their education. So it's really a call to action. And again, I learned all that because I realized that these people went to college in the book, just like I did, because someone stepped in. So I want more people to do that. So what's next? Everywhere that I speak, I get asked for Latinnovating in Spanish. because some parents read Spanish. And the child would like to go home with the book and share it in Spanish. I was at a school in Virginia, and the science teacher that brought me the next day wrote to me, and he says, one of the girls took the book home, sat her mother down the moment she walked in the door, and said, Mami, aquí está la razón que debo ir a la universidad. Okay? This is the reason I need to go to university. She's able to use these stories as another reason, because she's trying to make the case to her mom that she wants to go to college, and she has to make her case. And so that's the kind of power. But what if the book is in Spanish and the mom could read it for herself? So if there's anybody out there who has a sponsor that wants to help me with this project, it's number one. Also, I want to be able to give these books away at the middle schools, because a lot of schools just have no money. But since this is my business, the speaking and the books, can't really do that right now. So I'm looking for a sponsor to put their brand on the cover and say this book is a gift of, and I can give these books away. So that's another need. And then, of course, future volumes. Now, as I wrap up, I'm going to tell you, I get asked, oh, can I find it in the bookstore? Can I find this book in the bookstore? And I say no, because I chose to reject the corporate, oops, I did that too fast, the corporate book distribution system. For you to get a book in a store, watch what happens. It gets printed here, then a truck drives it over there to the distributor, and then the wholesaler places an order and they drive it over there, and then it goes to the bookstore in Texas, or the bookstore in California. So that means funding books in trucks, books in warehouses, books in stores. And when nobody walks into Barnes & Noble and says, hey, do you have any books on Latino innovators in the green economy? Then the books make a reverse route. Okay, that's not this kind of book. So I said no to that. And there was a distributor who wanted to sign me, and I said no. So here's what I do. We printed it somewhere else. We sent half the shipment to Pennsylvania to Amazon and half to California. We released immediately on Kindle and print. And the only other trip this book will ever take is when somebody orders it. So it's eco-friendly, but the best part is I can partner with organizations that share my value and commitment to Latino youth. And since I own all the rights to the book, I can really treat this as the social innovation, social enterprise that it is. So if you've got a nonprofit group that'd like to do a little promotion and earn some money, talk to me, because I can do that. And I'm very happy that I can do that kind of share instead of funding the trucks and warehouses and trucks, books and trucks and books and warehouses. I have time for a 2-minute video? Yeah. Okay. This is a summary that tells you emotionally what I feel about our young people and our world. 1.6 minutes. Thank you. So in summary, I just want to say that I really believe the future belongs to those who are raised, like a lot of these people in the book, to be innovators, to creatively reuse, to create with whatever stuff you've got lying around, critically thinking, connecting the disconnected dots. I think that's who owns the future. And then really people who are tenacious and never stop seeking knowledge. There's this one slide that I put together, a little math equation-like thing. Childhood lessons of conservation plus higher education positions you to innovate and lead. And I dare say this is an audience that probably meets this formula very well. So I encourage you to give that some thought. Ask yourself, am I applying my talent, energy, and time to preserve, conserve, and reuse? Am I working with like-minded people to honor the planet? I think if you ask this question every once in a while, your choices will surprise you. And lastly, the call to action, and that is to please support this social entrepreneur in the work that I'm doing. And by that I mean connect me to your business school. This is where I'm speaking. Business schools, I get called for sustainability conferences, Business Leadership Week. Please introduce me. I can give you my card, I can send you a speaker sheet. I ask that you introduce me. Also, if you have an employee affinity group, I'd love to come speak there. And lastly, buy this book and use it. This is a book meant to be used. And by that I mean, if you're thinking of career change, there's 10 different examples in here. I teased you with 4. There's others, but definitely use it to mentor. This is a tool for mentoring. And that is it. Feel free to engage me in all the following ways. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can we hear another round of applause for Grace?
Thank you. So I'll stay up here.
I just want to, give a little respect to Grace. I want to say that not only the stories in her book are just truly inspiring, but herself. Grace has done a really great job of going across country and collecting the stories for us. And I cannot commend you enough for all the effort you're pouring towards this. And we've seen the numbers now. They are shocking. And I really hope that through your efforts and efforts of other people like you, we can really turn that around and we can provide this nation with the people and the talent that we need to bring it to top level again, top form.